If you have ever stood in a worship service, lights low, music building, everyone around you with their hands raised and tears on their faces, and felt absolutely nothing, this one is for you. Not because something is wrong with you, because something might be wrong with the question. We broke down a verse last time, one that most people have been reading without its context. Today is about something bigger, a question that comes up more than almost any other in faith conversations, and the answer people give almost always makes it worse. The question is, why do I not feel the Holy Spirit? Here is how most people learn about the Holy Spirit. They are in a room, music is playing, the atmosphere shifts, something warm rises in their chest. Maybe tears come, maybe goosebumps, maybe a sense of weightlessness, of being held, of something electric running through them. And someone says, that is the Holy Spirit. That moment, that feeling, becomes the benchmark, the proof, the gold standard of what it means to be close to God. And from that point forward, every spiritual experience is measured against that moment. Did I feel it? Was God there? Did the Spirit move? And for a while, it works. The feelings come regularly. Worship feels alive. Prayer feels connected. Faith feels real because it feels like something. But then, and this happens to almost everyone eventually, the feeling stops. Not all at once. Gradually. The worship service that used to bring tears now feels like background noise. The prayer that used to feel like a conversation now feels like talking to a wall. And because the feeling was the proof, because the emotional experience was the evidence of God's presence, the conclusion is devastating. God left. The Spirit withdrew. Something must be wrong with me. This is where people start spiraling. They pray harder. They fast. They go to conferences. They chase the next worship experience that might reignite the feeling. And some of them find it, temporarily. The feeling returns for a night, maybe a weekend. And then it fades again. And the cycle continues. Feel God, lose God, chase God, feel God, lose God, chase God. It is exhausting. And it produces a faith that is entirely dependent on emotional weather, which is exactly as stable as it sounds. And here is where the real damage happens. When the feeling becomes the proof, the only accepted evidence that the Spirit is present, then people who do not feel it start to believe something is fundamentally broken in them. Not in their theology, in them. A young woman once described it this way: everyone in the room was crying during worship and I felt nothing. And I went home that night and thought, maybe God skipped me. Maybe whatever the Spirit is, it does not work on me. She was 22. She had been a believer her entire life. And one worship service where she did not cry made her question whether God was real. That is not a faith problem. That is a framework problem. The framework told her that feeling equals presence, and when the feeling was absent, the only conclusion was, so is God. The damage goes further than individual doubt. When churches build their culture around emotional experiences, when the highlight reel is always the moment someone fell to their knees, or spoke in tongues, or shook under the power, it creates an unspoken hierarchy. The people who feel intensely are closer to God. The people who do not are somehow behind or blocked or not surrendered enough. And that hierarchy is never stated out loud, which makes it even harder to push back against. You just absorb it. And if you are the person sitting quietly while everyone else is having a spiritual experience, you learn to fake it, or you leave. But here is where it gets complicated. Because the problem is not that feelings are bad. The problem is that feelings have been confused with presence. And those are not the same thing. An emotional experience in worship might be the Spirit. It might also be the music, the lighting, the social energy of a room full of people expecting something to happen. None of that is wrong. But it is not the same as the Spirit of God. And building your entire faith on the assumption that they are identical is like building a house on a foundation that moves. Now, the part most people miss. When Jesus talked about the Holy Spirit, he did not describe a feeling. In John chapter 14, verse 26, he said, "The Advocate of the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you." Teach, remind. Those are cognitive words, not emotional ones. The Spirit's primary role, according to Jesus, is not to make you feel something. It is to help you understand something, to bring clarity, to illuminate truth, to take something you already knew and make it suddenly, viscerally real. That might come with a feeling. It might not. The feeling is not the point. The clarity is. People point to Pentecost, Acts chapter 2, as proof that the Spirit is supposed to be dramatic. Wind, fire, speaking in tongues, and yes, that happened, once, at the birth of the church, as a sign. But the rest of the New Testament describes the Spirit's work very differently. Paul does not write letters to churches saying, "Are you feeling the fire?" He writes, "Are you becoming more loving? Are you becoming more patient? Is there peace in your community?" The emphasis shifts from event to transformation, from what you felt in the room to who you are when you leave it. And then there is Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. Paul describes what the Spirit actually produces, not what it feels like, but what it produces. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Read that list slowly. Not one of those is a worship service sensation. Every one of them is a character trait, something that shows up in how you live on a random Wednesday, not how you feel on a Sunday morning. The fruit of the Spirit is not something you feel in a moment. It is something that grows over a lifetime, slowly, quietly, often without fanfare. And that distinction, fruit versus feeling, might be the most important reframe in the entire conversation about the Holy Spirit. Because if the measure of the Spirit's presence is feeling, then every dry season is a crisis. Every flat worship service is a failure. Every Tuesday morning when you feel nothing is evidence that God has pulled away. But if the measure is fruit, if the question is not, did I feel the Spirit today, but am I becoming more patient, more kind, more honest, more peaceful, then the evaluation changes completely. You might not feel anything, but if you look at who you are becoming, the evidence is there. Quiet, unglamorous, real. Nathan remembers a season, months long, where every worship experience felt empty. No tears, no goosebumps, no warmth, nothing. And the conclusion at the time was obvious: the Spirit is gone. Something is wrong. Pray harder. But looking back, years later, that was actually the season where more change than any other. More patience with people who were difficult. More honesty in conversations that used to be performative. More peace in situations that used to trigger panic. The fruit was growing. The feeling was absent. And both of those things were true at the same time. There is a pastor, a quiet one, not famous, who once said something that stuck. He said, "The Holy Spirit is not a wave. It is a river. A wave hits you and leaves. You feel it, and then it is gone, and you stand on the shore waiting for the next one. A river moves through you. Slowly. Consistently. You might not feel it on any given day, but over time, it reshapes everything it touches. That is the difference between a faith built on feeling and a faith built on fruit. One crashes and recedes, the other carves canyons. So here is what this means practically. If you have been sitting in church wondering why everyone else seems to feel the Spirit and you do not, stop measuring by their experience. If you have been chasing the next conference, the next worship night, the next emotional high because your faith feels flat without it, consider the possibility that the flatness is not a failure. It might be the ground where deeper roots grow. And if someone has told you that not feeling the Spirit means you are doing something wrong, they are confusing weather with climate. The weather changes every day. The climate is what shapes the landscape. Stop chasing the feeling. Start noticing the fruit. Look at who you are becoming, not who you were on Sunday morning at the peak of the third worship song, but who you are at 11 p.m. on a Thursday when nobody is watching. That is where the Spirit lives, not in the goosebumps, in the growth. Here is a question worth asking yourself, not once, but regularly, not in a worship service, but in the quiet of an ordinary day. Am I more patient than I was 6 months ago? Am I more honest? Am I quicker to listen and slower to react? Do the people closest to me, not my church friends, but the ones who see me at my worst, would they say something has changed in me? If the answer is yes, even slightly, even imperfectly, then the Spirit is at work, whether you felt it or not, whether the worship song moved you or not, whether anyone laid hands on you or not. The fruit does not need an audience, it just needs time. And next time, something that might be hard to hear, about anxiety, about the phrase spiritual attack, and about why calling your mental health a demon might be doing more harm than you realize.